It exposes them to open source, which is great, but it helps them build a network of people that they can ask questions of. And if they do come into this through a relationship with a mentor, maybe that person sees how much work the student has put in and tries to get them hired at their own company.
Hi, this is your Sapnil Bharti and welcome to TFL Let's Talk. Today we have with us once again Kendall Nelson, Upstream Developer Advocate at OpenInfra Foundation. Kendall, it's great to have you back on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
How would you define mentorship? Because people, when they look at open source, they're like, you just go online, you can go to GitHub repository, documentation is there, you can do everything yourself. And there are folks who have not only created the projects, they can maintainship of the project, they have become leaders of the project. But from your perspective, talk about mentorship in the open source world.
Mentorship in open source, it definitely seems like it should be something a little bit more obvious because the documentation is there and the community is there to help you. But oftentimes, the communities, because of the scale and size of them, is really intimidating, particularly if your first language isn't their first language. So having someone that you can build a relationship with that is a little bit more of like a one-on-one relationship as like a gateway to being more comfortable speaking and interacting with the rest of the community is really important for a lot of people, in particular university students. So that's a lot of the work that I do.
Is mentorship more about code or it's more about community support, like helping folks, hey, this is how you get started?
I think it can be about all of those things, actually. Depending on what a particular mentee is going into the relationship looking for. Sometimes it is more focused on code. They want help understanding the tool chain or the workflow of the community, more like technical things, how to test the code correctly or correctly develop unit tests. But other times it's about learning the communication skills and more of the like project management or community management skills. And some people are just looking to network and make more connections with people in a variety of industries and kind of feel out the space to figure out where they fit, where they want to go. So, all of them.
How much of this mentorship is done like unofficially, like part of the community, people will help each other, or there are a lot of programs at the foundational level to kind of have a very structured plan around mentorships?
I primarily work with a lot more of the structured mentoring programs, but you don't need that structure if you are brave enough to go and like ask for a mentor in the community. But a lot of times having more formalized mentorship programs does make it easier for people because there's a process to follow. They know what to expect, they know what's expected of them, and it smooths out the whole process from start to finish, as opposed to forming something a little bit more organically, which is totally an option too.
Can you talk about what kind of programs does Open Intra Foundation have?
So the Open Infrastructure Foundation participates in a lot of different mentorship programs. In particular, I have spent the last maybe 6 years forming the University Partnership Program, which basically has two different setups. So the University Partnership Program, we, like myself at the Open Infrastructure Foundation, I find projects and people in the community willing to mentor that then I bring to universities for students to work on. So the two different setups are more of an internship sort of program, or the alternative is like groups of students usually working together throughout a course, like a senior design course or a capstone sort of course towards the end of their degree. So the internship program example, I work with Oregon State University in particular. They've been the longest running internship program. So they have an open source lab that is on campus. And so I work with the organizer of the lab to find students that have spare time to work upstream on OpenStack. And so a lot of times I will match them with various mentors in the community, and they are able to continue working upstream for the entire year, so the more than one semester. The other format is definitely the most popular, where I coordinate with a professor to create a batch of 2 or 3 projects, maybe a couple more, for students to choose from to work in groups with that mentor on that project. And we've had students in those programs work on both OpenStack and Kata containers, and we hope to grow that list in the future to include Zool and Starling X as well. So it's cool to see how many universities we've had get on board in the last couple of years. We have probably a half a dozen in the US, and I've been trying to get a university in both Europe and 2 or 3 in Asia as well to participate. But their school programs are a little bit different, so finding where we fit in and figuring that out is a little bit more organic than I'm more familiar with universities based in the US, obviously, because that's where I went to university. But I look forward to expanding it in the future.
Are there certain criterion that who can serve as a mentor? Are there any qualifications required, or it's like, hey, you have been around for a while, you know about the project, that's all it's needed?
What I look for in mentors is generally an understanding of the project. They know of a particular area that is of a reasonable scope and like challenge level that would be good for students. And they also preferably have the ability to merge code in the particular repository that they want the students to be working in, but also to understand what it is to be a mentor and to be able to make themselves available and be create a safe space for students to ask questions of them, because it it's intimidating working in a community as big as OpenStack or Kubernetes as another example. So being able to talk to the student and make them feel comfortable asking questions and making sure to make themselves available when the student is running into issues that they maybe don't feel comfortable going to the larger community for help with.
What is the official approach that is there at the Open Infrastructure Foundation to reach out and work with some of these universities?
The majority of the university partnerships that I have established have been really organically made. So it's been through connections at some of our member companies at the Open Infrastructure Foundation. They might be working with the university already, collaborating or donating resources to that university. And so they have connections on faculty or at a lab. And through those introductions, I've been able to establish relationships. The other really interesting way I've made a lot of connections is actually from people that have graduated from those universities and gone to work in OpenStack or in Kata. And so they have connected the professors that they had with me, and we've been able to build out programs from there. Generally, I just need interest from the professor and like buy-in from the professor, because it doesn't cost a university anything to join this university partnership program. We have an associate membership that's a recognition of the collaboration between the university and the foundation, but it's really just if the professor wants to like try it out, and if they're interested in open source and getting their students involved in open source and all of the benefits that come with that, we can figure out a way to make it work, whether it's an internship, some part of a course that might be a whole semester or 2 semesters. Well, I'm happy to figure something out. The more students involved in open source, the better.
While it is quite obvious the benefits of mentorship, for the project, but what are the benefits there for the students, for the universities, and of course for the projects and even foundations?
There are benefits on all sides of it. Like no one party is getting all of the benefits. So for students specifically, they get the opportunity to learn the practice of software engineering, which makes them more work ready and hireable when they are graduating. Often during university, they don't learn what an end-to-end workflow looks like, the tool chains that companies use to develop software. And so having experience with that before they graduate is really, really beneficial. And they also are less likely to jump into a established project and focus on like maintenance and upgrades and maybe bug fixes or I don't know, fixing testing, those sorts of things that are critical to all software. Most of what students do during university is they build a project from start to finish on their own and then they just kind of chuck it away at the end. So they don't have a lot of experience with that thing, that sort of scenario, which is what most of software engineering is like in the real world. So learning to do those things at university is incredibly important and incredibly beneficial to the companies that end up hiring them because they already have more experience than many of the other students graduating that don't learn those things. Another thing for the students is that it exposes them to open source, which is great, but it helps them build a network of people that they can ask questions of. And if they do come into this through a relationship with a mentor, maybe that person sees how much work the student has put in and tries to get them hired at their own company. Um, so having that network and a variety of examples of roles in the industry better informs students of where they can go. And obviously, open source projects themselves are always looking for new contributors. I know there's no shortage of things to be done. There's always more code to be tested, more test scenarios to run, more bug fixes. So there's always small things that students can work on and get involved with. One interesting thing I had heard, like more than once actually, at the Open Source Summit, and also from a lot of our member companies at the Open Infrastructure Foundation, is that there's kind of a vacuum of talent when it comes to looking for open source contributors that they want to hire at their companies. There are companies looking to invest in open source, but they're kind of scared to jump in because they don't have people with the knowledge base. So by students getting involved earlier and knowing the basics of open source collaboration when they're ready to be hired, they're going to be more marketable than a lot of other graduates. And it's exactly what the industry wants right now. More people with more open source experience. And for the project side of things, in addition to there never being a shortage of work, it does add a lot of diversity of perspective because students often look at things in a way that more seasoned developers don't. And they ask interesting, thought provoking questions when they're trying to understand bits of code. And maybe you find holes in your documentation, or maybe you find out there's a better way of implementing a particular feature. So it definitely increases the health of the project and makes for more robust software when you have different perspectives and different backgrounds all collaborating together to make the community a better place.
Kendall, thank you so much for taking time out today and, of course, talk about the importance of mentorship. Thanks for great insights. And I would love to have you back on the show. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I was glad to be here.